Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the MORryde RV Cargo Slide on a 2022 Freightliner XC chassis. So just like the basement on your house, the basement of your RV is where you can store a lot of the things that you need, but maybe not on a daily basis and don't want to have them in your living quarters. And this one, being nice and open, allows us to get a lot of space on our slide out tray. And this one is 90 inches by 39 inches, so that really allows for a lot of storage. And normally you can store quite a bit in here, but you're gonna have to dive in there and grab all that stuff out, where this makes it nice and easy. You just lift this spring-loaded latch out, and you get 60% extension, so that means you can really access just about anything you need on this side. But if you have anything stored on that side, not to worry, this actually slides both ways, so you can access it from the other side and slide it that way. Now, being made out of steel means that it's heavy duty, but overall it slides really easy. You don't really have to fight it too much. It goes really well on the bearings in that track. What's really nice too is this carpeted bottom means that you're not going to have things just sliding around as you move it. It's going to at least kind of hold that into place. What's really nice too is it's already pre-assembled. So really all you have to do is kind of drop it into place, make sure that it fits, slide out your tray, drill it into place with bolts and included hardware, and pretty much after that you're done. And if you're worried about weight capacity and it not being able to hold your cargo, not to worry. This is rated at 800 pounds. So with me even on this edge at 200 and some odd pounds, this isn't a problem for this tray at all. Now, installation's super easy to do, and honestly with a pass-through compartment like this is really utilizing that space perfectly to really be able to gain access to everything. Speaking of that installation, let's take a look at that now. Before we get anything installed, I recommend having an extra set of hands, as this is rather large and we want to test fit it. So with the bands on, we're going to place it in our basement where we're going to be putting our tray just to make sure that everything is going to clear. Now with this in place, eventually we're going to be drilling this into the floor, and ideally you're going to try to find a stud underneath that it can securely attach to. It's just going to make it a little bit stronger overall. So as I feel under here, we have a stud that's right about here. So I'm going to try to get our mounting tabs kind of centered over that, so that way when we drill in, it's going to be on there. Now you're going to want to check all your clearances, so making sure that your doors are able to close properly, also that you have enough clearance for this to slide out. And the best way to check that is take the banding and you can cut this off or pull it off there. And this is going to allow us to extend this and double check all of our clearances. Now don't fully extend this, obviously the whole thing can kind of come with it, but the main thing is we can see with our door fully open, we're able to utilize this spot, still be able to drill into the frame, so we're looking good. Now we're going to need to pull the whole assembly out now that we know we have our clearances and set it somewhere safe to where it's not going to get scratched. So we've just kind of taken our cardboard and unfolded it, that way we have a nice safe place to put it. Now once extended about halfway, the person on the extended side is just going to kind of lift up at an angle, and that's going to get it over those stops. And then we can continue to kind of move this out until we get it slid out. So now you want to take your frame and place it in the basement where you're planning on putting it. And this is where you really want to make sure it's nice and squared up. Now a frame this big, it can kind of shift. So you want to make sure it's as squared up as possible. So I went ahead and measured here and then on the other side, and I just used a chalk marker to kind of keep my line straight. I then measured from the outside edge just to make sure that it's even on both sides. So having those reference marks, in case it shifts a little bit, it's nice to be able to go back to those if you need to. So at this point, we're going to start making our first drill marks right into this hole underneath the bearing. So double check all your clearances underneath of where any screws are going to be going. You want to make sure that you're obviously not hitting any wiring, plumbing, anything along those lines. Now this side I don't have the frame underneath, so I'm going to do that one first, and then I'm going to need to pilot drill the other one. So we'll just kind of go at an angle here. Be careful not to make contact with your bearing, but we should be able to get this drilled in. So this one's going to go directly into our frame. So I'm going to do a pilot hole with a drill bit. Now, something I realized with the other one, as you kind of go at an angle, it's going to kind of push it back just maybe about 1/8 of an inch, but that's something you might want to take into account. So bumping this up 1/8 of an inch to draw it in perfectly might be key. So we'll just go ahead, we'll get this drilled out and drill through the frame rail. Go ahead and run this in. Now we'll just go ahead and repeat on the other side on both corners. Now with the 4 sides already mounted in, we're going to put our tray back in. This is going to give us that nice structure, and we'll be able to get the rest of these mounted up, but this is going to make sure that it's going to slide evenly. So now that we have our tray in place, you're going to want to slide to make sure everything's good, everything's actuating properly, it's not getting hung up. And at this point, we're going to mount up hardware, at least 4 on each side, evenly spaced out. But you can see there's quite a bit of extra hardware here. So on our frame side, I'm going to use the longer screws to bite into that metal. On the non-frame side, it may be tempting to use these, and it'd probably be okay going into the wood to hold it in place, but since this is rated at pretty high weight capacities, I'm going to go and use our heavy-duty bolts here with nylon lock nuts. So I'll be drilling holes through with washers and then bolting it from underneath. So it's kind of up to you, but I figure since we have this hardware, it'll be a little bit more sturdy having those bolts in place. So I went ahead and slid this one way, and that way we can accomplish at least getting 2 of them in place. You can always put more if you want. So there's a number of different holes that you can put them in. I'm just going to work down this frame side, putting some pilot holes and then our longer screws, and then we'll go ahead, we'll drill out for those bolts to get those in place. Now on the rail, you may notice that there's going to be larger diameter holes. Those are going to work really well for our bolts. But for any of the smaller ones, those are where our screws are going to be. So where we have holes that are larger, we're going to run the bolts through there. Just make sure it's even on the other side with that hardware. You'll see that there's a few mounting points up there. So if you need to, you can use the small screws instead of the bolts on this side, just as a little bit added protection. But again, just make sure these are going through those larger diameters. So with our one side mounted up, we'll just slide our tray to the other side and repeat. So now with everything bolted up, everything's secure, all that's left to do is load up all your supplies, put this back in the basement, close up your doors, and hit the road. And that was a look and installation of the MORryde RV Cargo Slide on a 2022 Freightliner XC chassis.